Welcome to the Craft of Coaching podcast, where we dive into what it truly takes to become a skilled, confident life coach. I'm your host, Kate, head of the CLCC, or Certified Life Coach Collective, an ICF accredited Level 1 coach training program. We combine courage, coaching, and community to offer you more than just a training program, but a life-changing experience where you use your own personal transformation as the learning ground for supporting your clients. On this podcast, we explore how you can use coaching skills to support your clients or expand your own growth, all grounded in evidence-based coaching practices. Learn more about our program and get free resources for becoming a life coach at teamclcc.com. And now, here's today's episode. All right, I hope you read today's title because, we're going to go there. What do you do when a client's political views are wildly different from yours? So let's talk about something really uncomfortable that can happen in a coaching relationship. You're having a session, things are going well, you've worked with this client for a while, you're building rapport, and then boom, your client drops a political comment, one that goes completely against your values. And suddenly, you're no longer present. You're in your head. You're wondering, can I even coach this person? Am I complicit if I stay quiet? Do I challenge this at all, or do I just get through the session? If you've ever had this happen, or if you have a fear that it might, this episode is for you. And we're going to talk about what to do when your client's political values are wildly different from yours and how to navigate that with integrity. Now, first things first, this might be a problem that you don't run into all that often. It's not one that I have run into all that often. And the reason for that is that I'm pretty open about where I stand politically and what I believe politically. I am not on social media what I would consider to be a megaphone, meaning that I tend not to be the person grabbing the mic or the megaphone in this metaphor and saying, here's the thing, here's the political theory, here's what we need to be thinking about, here's where you need to be placing your activism. I consider my role to be more of an amplifier. I think that there are people who have already curated followings, who have a lot of really important things to say, and I am more of an amplifier for those messages than I am an originator of a new message. And that is how I tend to show up. And people see that. And predictably, I have weeks on different social media platforms where new people will follow me and I share something political, I repost something political, and then I see some unfollows. And I would imagine that that's because people followed me originally thinking, okay, she's talking about courage or whatever. And I resonate with that. And then they see what I'm sharing politically. And then they go, I don't like that. I don't want to get those reshares and reposts. So that's fine to me. Because the brand that you put out there is supposed to be representative of you and your values. And it's okay for people to see that. And I have some rules for social media. I actually have an episode on the Your Courageous Life podcast in which I talk about, how I handle social media. And one of mine is I'm not getting into arguments with people on social media about stuff. I'm just not. I have better things to do with my time. Supporting people who need support is a better use of my time than arguing with someone who just wants to argue. And if you are considering becoming a coach, or you're new to coaching and you're kind of afraid of getting a backlash from people, just understand that there's no way to not get a backlash from people. You're going to go through it. And at the end of the day, it's honestly just a shrug of the shoulders. It's also possible, by the way, in this current day and age, that some of the backlash that gets put out there is an AI bot. It's not even a real person. So again, don't waste your time arguing about this stuff. But let's go back to, what do I do if I'm in a session and I find out that my client voted for or supports a radically different set of values in government than I do? First thing, I just want to say this. I want to normalize this. You're not wrong for having a reaction because you're not a robot. You have values, you have lived experience, and our values are important to us. And when a client says something that really clashes with what you hold as sacred, it makes sense that you'd feel reactive. As I record this, we are currently living through the government shutdown and SNAP benefits being denied to people who do not have access to food. And if I was coaching a client right now who said, I just don't think that people deserve to have food, I would have a very strong reaction to that. So it makes sense that if you have a value that people should be fed and somebody else is going like, no, they don't, you're going to have a reaction to that. It doesn't mean you failed as a coach. It means you're human. And the goal isn't to erase that. The goal is to be in relationship with it. Next thing, this is a good time to remind ourselves of what coaching is and what it isn't. Coaching isn't therapy, we all know that, but here's the thing, coaching is definitely not the same as debate. Coaching is a relational process. It's based on presence. It's based on curiosity. It's based on partnership. Your role is not to convert or correct someone's politics. Your role is to coach their humanity, their patterns, beliefs, desires, blocks. And I'm going to talk in a moment about what it means to decide to step away, but I first just want to speak to something that I at least hold to be true. I think it's worth considering that often people are in political echo chambers. By the way, I read political articles or articles. Sometimes I don't always know that they're very political because they tend not to be very fact-based, but from the political party that I'm not aligned with, because I'm curious about what the mentality is. I'm curious about where I can find common ground. I'm trying to also walk my talk and not be in a political echo chamber. But it's important for you to think about the fact that most people consumers of information tend to be in political echo chambers. So for instance, they tend to only listen to the same news sources. And some of those sources may have the title news in their network description, but they definitively are not. In fact, some of these, quote unquote news sources have been sued for spreading false information. And as part of those lawsuits have had to state publicly that they are not in fact a news network. They are a quote unquote entertainment network. And if you think you know what news organization I'm talking about, go ahead and look it up. It's true. So in my personal life, with this awareness that people are often in political echo chambers, I want to speak to how I tend to hold it when I meet people who have different political beliefs than me. First things first, I try to start by asking them questions. I want to get clear on what their worldview is. And I want to get clear in part because I'm curious about whether or not this person is open to having an open and honest conversation in which people are allowed to disagree, or they are open to having their mind changed. They're open to hearing what my perspective is, or if they just want to argue, if they're just going to be an ideological parrot. So I'm curious, I'm asking questions. Next, after hearing some of what they share, I try to speak into common ground. We probably both want affordable health care for our families. We probably both want to pay less in taxes. We might have different ways we would like to achieve those aims, but we probably both want the same outcomes. And third, if there is incorrect or untrue information, I gently correct it. So for instance, to use a recent and relevant example as of the time of recording this episode, if a certain president is claiming that grocery expenses at Thanksgiving are down by 25%, and someone says to me, well, grocery prices are down by 25%. I'll say something in response to that, like, I heard that and I was surprised when I read it. And then I poked around a bit and found that statement was made based on Walmart lowering their costs for a Thanksgiving meal by 25%, But also Walmart ended up making the meal a lot smaller. So really the cost hasn't gone down. People are getting less. And if that angers someone and they at that point are, it's like, okay, we don't need to keep talking. I'm under no obligation to continue a conversation with someone who just doesn't want to acknowledge the truth. And it is not a good use of my time to try to get someone to acknowledge a truth that they are not willing to acknowledge. Now, let's take this to the client level. If I was in a situation with a client where a client wanted to explore a topic where there were mistruths, what would I do? I'd ask us to collaboratively examine that, just as I would the mistruth of a client holding an untrue belief system about themselves, like I'm not capable of doing something. I would actively listen, I'd ask questions, and yes, I would correct the mistruth. I would counteract a false narrative. Now, the client still gets to believe whatever they want to believe. If a client really wants to dig in and believe that they are not capable of doing something, I as a coach can't change that. And if a client really wants to believe that grocery expenses are down by 25%, even though we have no economic data to support that, they get to believe that. I will state what is the truth, but they get to believe what they want to believe. Now, here's the thing. You do not have to be a hero. If a client's beliefs fundamentally clash with your ethics or safety, you're allowed to end the relationship. Full stop. So some questions to ask yourself to determine whether or not this is a viable situation as a coach. And they're questions that I think are good for generally when there are political differences. You can pause and ask, is this a values difference or a human rights difference? Disagreeing on tax policy is different than denying someone's rights to exist, to function freely. There's a big difference between I would like more money to go to the military and I would like more money to go to masked, armed people on the street grabbing citizens and assuming that they have violated the law, arresting them and essentially kidnapping them without a warrant and without due process. That's denying someone's right to just simply peaceably exist. And that's very, very different than saying I'd like more money to go to the military or the police. Second thing, is this interfering with your ability to be present? If you are spiraling internally and can't access presence with your client, it's time to step back from working with them. And so you might notice that you get through a session where some of this stuff comes up, you feel like it didn't go so well, you take some time, you regroup, you feel like you can do a little better, great, then you can come back. But if you're noticing that even after you take some time after the session to regroup, you get your own coaching support, and you still feel like this is not good, then you need to have an honest conversation with that client about stepping away from the relationship. Third question, is this a space where you have room for curiosity, or is this a rupture? Some political differences between people are an opportunity for deeper exploration. And that's what I'm talking about in the example I gave a moment ago about how I tend to handle these things in my personal life. Others signal a line that's been crossed. If a client says to me, I don't believe that women have the right to vote, a line's crossed. I don't have an interest in continuing to work with someone who believes that. And I am allowed to say, I think that there is a fundamental mismatch of values here, and I'm not comfortable continuing the relationship. I'm happy to see if I can refer you to someone else. Now, what do you say if you say anything? Okay. It depends on how comfortable you feel, how safe you feel, psychologically safe you feel. Because you might decide that the thing that is actually more supportive of your personal safety is you need to actually just deal with some things offline outside of the session. But if you decide that you want to address a comment that's been made in sessions, what do you say? Well, one thing, I'd like us to pause for a moment. Something you said brought up a response within me, and I want to check in with how we move forward from here. So being really open and transparent about the fact that something was said and you want to check in. And what do you say next? Well, probably something like, I'm noticing that when you shared XYZ, that touches on some personal values for me. I actually feel really differently, or I actually have some information that about what you said, that some data that indicates that what you just stated might not be true. I am still here, and I want to try to be transparent and have a discussion about this so that we can stay in relationship and I can continue to support you. So essentially, you're using language. You want to use language that centers the relationship rather than coming straight out the gate as a confrontation. And I say that from the perspective of what actually changes behavior and changes minds. I mean, psychological studies have been done on this. They've tried things like putting people under duress to see if you can get people to change their minds about things. And what ends up happening is you get performative compliance, not true internal change. Think about it at work. If you have a boss that's a real jerk and you know that they're going to yell at you if you make even the tiniest mistake, you might, to keep the job, go ahead and work harder and get really hypervigilant around trying not to make mistakes. You might performatively comply, but no part of you looks at that boss and is like, thank you so much for yelling at me so I won't make a mistake. No, you think they're a jerk. So use language that actually centers the relationship, not confronting people to try to get them to be different through the confrontation, because it doesn't actually work. If your interest is in confronting people and calling them out, then I guess that's a strategy you can use. But my interest is not in confronting people and calling them out, because that doesn't actually make them change. My interest is in trying to provide some kind of a bridge or a roadmap. And again, you might be really clear that's not the work you want to do in the world. That's emotional labor. You've got enough. You're topped up. You don't want to do that. I particularly speak to people who are part of marginalized groups, people of color, members of the LGBTQIA community, women. You might go, you know what? Like, I've got enough to deal with in this world without trying to see if I can find common ground with a client who fundamentally believes that my rights should be taken away. And that's okay. It's okay to decide that. And that really speaks to, when is it time to walk away? You know, there are times when the difference is too vast, when it's no longer just discomfort, it would be harm to you to continue the conversation. If someone's values are denying your humanity or the humanity of others, you don't need a coaching plan, you need a boundary. And you're allowed to say, through our discussions, I've realized that I'm not the right coach to support you. I'll be ending our coaching relationship, and I can provide referrals if needed. That's not unprofessional. That is ethical. You know, in CLCC, we talk about coaching the person, not the problem. So I had a thought today about, how do we coach the person, not the politics? In some cases, you can still coach someone who thinks differently than you. You can coach someone who's conservative when you're progressive. You can coach someone who voted for someone you didn't. The question is, can you stay curious about what's underneath? Sometimes a client says something political, but it's actually about fear. It's about fear and identity and shame. And again, sometimes people have incorrect information. If a client came to me saying, I'm really stressed about the economy, I mean, this negative impact that immigrants are having on the economy is just, this is a great opportunity to have them research the documented, factual, positive impact that immigrants have on the economy. And if a client came to me incorrectly thinking, I can't find a new relationship because all men cheat, I wouldn't let a client simply sit in that incorrect story. No, I would collaborate with them and say, let's find some ways to see the truth of the situation Maybe you even need to research how common or uncommon cheating is. By the way, it's about 20 to 25%. I looked at it actually for this example. So it's not true that all men cheat. So I'm not about soapboxing or proselytizing. I'm about where do we go where coaching lives, beneath the slogans, beneath the surface. How do we really get into what it means to be human? So you don't have to agree with your client to be a good coach. You don't have to continue coaching them. You do, ethically and professionally, need to know your limits, set boundaries when values are irreconcilable, and really just be honest with yourself about what you can hold. You're not here to coach in a vacuum. You're here to coach in the world. And the world is complex. The world can be divided. The world is also deeply human. So do what it takes to stay grounded, stay honest, stay in your integrity. And in fact, if this question is really a concern for you, maybe this is the moment when you start including in your branding, on your sales pages, a really honest and open discussion of what you stand for so that people are clear. It's all an opportunity for you to continue to refine the type of work that you want to offer in the world and the type of coaching that you want to do with your clients. All right, that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Before you go, would you help us out and take a moment to give us a rating in iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you're listening? It really helps us get the word out to other listeners. And before you go today, would you like free resources to support your coaching journey? Whether you're considering becoming a coach or you want advanced coach skills training, access our coaching resource library at teamclcc.com. Again, that's teamclcc.com. Can't wait to connect with you. And again, thanks for listening.